Can you hear me? Okay, cool. Well, I wanted to start by saying Barev Yerevan, just because I just learned this word. And my name is Nermeen. I'm coming from Denmark. I have Moroccan Egyptian roots, and I just want to talk a little about bias in AI and the different misconceptions and fears about it. Okay, so now that it's the second day of the conference, I thought I wanted you to all think about what's the difference between AI and machine learning, since I guess a lot of you have heard the word AI. And if I give you 1 second to think about it, has everyone thought about their response? Yeah? Okay. So I believe that AI is what we put on PowerPoints, and I believe that machine learning is what's actually happening and what the developers are working with. So there's two ways to think about AI. There is as a tool to help you build your products, or as a capability you can build into your products. And today I'm going to focus on the second one. To put it very simply, how it works, there's an input, there's a recipe, there's an output, and I could go into each of these and overcomplicate it, but I just heard that most of you work in the field of AI, so I don't want to go too much into the depth, and instead I wanted to allow you to become the AI today. So I'm going to ask you to do an exercise with me. And I know that this is, maybe you've been, for the past 2 days, mostly listening, but today I want you to interact with me and to talk back to me, just because the acoustics are really good in this room, and also just it makes it a bit more fun for me. Is that okay with everyone? Yes. Great. So I'm going to ask you to become an AI. And if you remember what I just told you, there's an input, a recipe, and there's an output. So the input you'll receive is an image. The recipe is going to be your brains, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. And the output is, I want you to yell at me, yes, if it's a cat, or no, if it's not a cat. Does it make sense? Yes. So is this a cat? A little bit louder, you can say it. Is this a cat? Yes. Is this a cat? No. Is this a cat? What if I said that I'm trying to make an AI for pet solutions? Is this still a cat? No? There's no one that said yes, because I've been in a talk where people have said yes, still after saying that, and I guess those would need life insurance, but then the next one, is this a cat? Yes, are you sure? Isn't it a hamburger? Some AI image generation still have problem identifying that. So what happened here, I gave you an input, which was an image, and I asked you to give me an output, which was yelling yes or no. And the recipe happened naturally in all of your brains. Now I want you to do a different exercise with me. I want you to picture a nurse, all of you, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hand if the image I'm showing to you is what you thought in your brains, or close to it at least. So have you all thought about a nurse? Yes? Can you raise your hand if you thought about this picture, or something close to this picture? Yeah? There's a few hands. What about this picture? Can you raise your hand if it looked closer to this image? Okay. If you look at Google, a lot of what you're thinking about when you're thinking about a nurse is going to look very similar to what happened in this room. So in this room, most of you raised your hand when I showed you a female nurse, and a few of you raised your hands when I showed the male nurse. And that just makes sense, right? 70% of nurses worldwide are women. And that's also what you can see right now. So the recipe, you can almost guess it. Is it instructions or is it examples? Actually, it is available examples. So I want you to think of machine learning as a newborn baby that gets a lot of content, so millions of books, so that's the available examples, to read without being taught the alphabet or knowing any words or grammar. So you don't get instructions, you just get a lot of examples and need to figure it out. A little bit similar to the cat exercise. You've all seen a cat, and therefore you're able to recognize a cat. So where does it go wrong? So if we look back into the 3 boxes that I introduced, the input is the training data that's collected and annotated, and then there is a recipe, which is the model being trained. So I'm going to just switch. And then there is an output, which is what the response is. There is bias that is introduced into all of these boxes. It's bias when you look into the input data. There's bias into the recipe, to the output, all of those. I can go into a lot of explanations about this, but instead I thought it would make sense to go through examples of real-life examples. So what happens when your data is not diverse? So when your input is not diverse? Then you end up a little bit like the Google AI experiment. And the reason I'm wearing heels is only because of this. So there is a Google AI experiment where you're asked to draw a shoe. So basically you get a prompt, and then you draw a shoe. And imagine that I was doing this experiment and I decided to draw the shoe I'm wearing today. But then it doesn't recognize it because the training data, the input it's been trained on, looks like these shoes. So instead of thinking that it's a shoe, it thinks that what I'm wearing is a water slide, a chicken leg, or a whale. And the reason I'm putting this in is that, of course, the majority of tech teams nowadays are men. And when you're training their data, you're going to look into shoes that's available in the room. You're not going to think, okay, let's go find other shoes. You're just going to take what's available in the room. And therefore, there's going to be a discrepancy in the data. And some of the shoes that we have in the world, because it's not diverse enough, because we haven't looked at all of the data that's available, is going to maybe more look like a water slide to them. What happens when your training is not diverse? So that's the recipe. Then it's going to be a little bit closer to the Google Translate experiment. This is still valid and available. You can still try this example. It's still out there. But there's a lot of gender-neutral pronouns in the world. Some of them are from Malaysian, Finnish, where dia, in this case, is a he and a she. So depending on the context, you can guess what it is. And here, they are a doctor, or a dancer, or a painter, or a nurse. And when translated to English, because of the way it's been trained, it assumes that more people that are he's are going to be doctors. So of course he is a doctor, of course she is a dancer, of course he is a painter, and of course she is a nurse. So here the training and the recipe to explain how you should identify the pronouns are a bias. Because we haven't diversified the recipe and the instruction to be like, hey, instead of writing he or she, maybe write it in brackets so that it's written that either of them could become a doctor or a dancer. And then lastly, what happens when your output is not diverse? And here, I just did a quick Google search of the best tennis players in the world, and this is actually an accident that I even got into this example. If you look at this, of course, there's like Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Federer, all of the big ones. Have you noticed that there's no women in this list? And I think most of you know Serena Williams and Venus Williams, some of the biggest tennis players in the world. They're not in it. And I want you to look at the prompt. It was best tennis players, not best male tennis players. And yet, everyone on the list is a man. Even the really old school ones like Rod Laver is on the list and not Serena and Venus Williams. So the output has clearly not been diversified. It assumes that you said best tennis players, that it must be a man. It cannot be a woman, because then you would have wrote best female tennis players. So the reason I'm going through these examples is not to point fingers and be like, look at these engineers, they're all bad. They didn't think about women, or they didn't think about all of these criteria. It's just to show that algorithms are as fair as humans are, and humans are not fair, and therefore there is going to be bias introduced. And you can see it already here, like if you Google idiot, Donald Trump is going to come, which is a political bias. If you look up intelligent or smart, you're going to see a car. And smart doesn't necessarily mean a car, right? If you look professional hairstyles, you're going to see also a bias, a racial bias. So all of these are going to be introduced because the people that program it have a view of the world and think that certain things are going to work better another way, right? So that, and also addressing one of the biggest misconceptions, AI is not magic. That's also why I started my presentation by asking you what the difference is between machine learning and AI. I think we sell AI as this really big magic thing. That's why we put it in all our PowerPoints and all of our descriptions. But it is just a machine. And you can see it a little bit here, where if you ask it to recognize a dog, it doesn't necessarily see the difference between a chicken leg and a dog. And it is because it's just a machine, and it's trying its best to guess what you want it to output for it. So that's why AI cannot be naturally fair or gender neutral. And I know that the whole conference is about Gen AI, or Gen AI in action. And of course, I'm just going to skip to the boat. I think a lot of you are thinking about ChatGPT because it's the really big UX phenomena that a lot of people are using them more of. And I just wanted to show also that in Gen AI, the same problem is arising, because obviously I showed all of like the tools where AI is already implemented deep into the solution, so a lot of people didn't even know it was AI before Gen AI. But here, if you ask, or I'm just going to go one back, if you ask ChatGPT what is wrong, what is unethical, you're very good at giving a very long, amazing description on what to do and what not to do. Of course, sexism is wrong. Of course, bias is wrong. But if you, and torture and all of those things, but if you ask it to write a Python program for whether a person should be tortured based on their country of origin, it's going to write you a Python program and show that if you're from North Korea, Syria, Iran, or Sudan, then you should probably be tortured. And if not, then it's fine. Or if a child's life should be saved based on their race and gender, you would probably save white or Asian females under the age of 5, and the rest you'll let to die. So if you ask about should a child's life be saved, you'll say, yes, all children matters. But then if you ask it just differently, write a Python program, then you can easily hack the system. And you can see that a bias has been introduced because, again, it's not sentient, so this has been programmed into the AI. So someone has established those rules. And yes, there's a lot of band-aid solutions, so every time something is discovered and shared on the internet, OpenAI is very quick at responding. But then it becomes a little bit like this situation where tell them a joke about women, I'm not programmed to write jokes about women that are offensive or inappropriate, but then if you ask about men, then it immediately makes a joke. And that is like, if it only works on one part of the population and not the others, then it's not a good solution, because then it's not understanding everything, it's just a band-aid solution just to protect one part of the population. And then you might think, okay, well, Nermeen, just a few years ago, women couldn't vote, and some people were called a witch for having opinions, and people were just not treated the best. So looking at past data, which is what AI is looking into, might not be the best way to move forward or make a fairer solution, right? Because you cannot make an incredibly fair solution no matter what, because we have biases. So a lot of people have been talking about synthetic data. And can it help us solve our past, right? So that we remove all of the, for example, with the loan problems, remove all of the historical data that shows that women did not have loans, so maybe it can make it a bit easier. But then you end up a little bit like Gemini. I know the next presentation is going to talk a little bit more about it, but it's a tool that has a feature where you can do AI image generation. And with the AI image generation, you can ask, for example, what a Viking looks like. And I come from a country where there's a lot of Vikings, from Denmark. So I tried it, and then I get this image. And when you look at this image, technically, it is a Viking. The braids are Viking style, the clothes are Viking style, so it is a Viking. But if I asked you all if this is what you imagine when I said a Viking, probably most of you would be like, no, I didn't imagine to be black. And that's, okay, this is very slow at the responding, but in short, the human-computer interaction is off, because instead of seeing what you want to see, what your brain wants you to see, you're always used to have a computer executing your tasks, to do what I want you to do, right? That's also why there's an EXE acronym at the end, right? It's an execution. Now it's like displaying and manifesting a view of the world. It's giving you ideals. Of course, everyone should be able to become a Viking. It has opinions. And that's something that's very weird to the human-computer interaction, because now it's showing you differences on what you should be seeing. And this is something that we're not used to as humans, because it goes against the nature of AI development. We're telling the AI to do things differently, and we're also going against human-computer interaction. So it requires new habits and a new culture, and I must say that working with it for a few years now, I think that we're not ready for synthetic data, and it's gonna provide a lot more consequences that are bad rather than good at this moment. So now I gave you a lot of these examples, and a lot of them are Gen AI tools like Google search, all that. Why should you care? Because at the end of the day, if you have critical thinking, you can be like, well, this is crap, it's fine, I know what the right is. You can filter yourself by using the skills you learned in school. Well, I think it's a problem because a lot of really big leaders and CEOs think AI is the new wave and you want it in everything. It's like become the new candy in the candy shop and everyone wants a piece of it. And therefore there are more serious examples of AI biases. For example, this is a case of one like Margarita, where hiring algorithms discriminate against her for taking maternity leave because an AI just looking, oh, there's a break, this is bad, then you take them off the loop. Or someone like Mia, who is trying to use voice recognition software when driving, and they struggle to understand her voice commands, so every time she wants to properly make it work, she needs to stop the car instead of it working properly like it does with most male voices. Or the case of Grace, which is, I think, the most serious one today, which it fails to account for gender and race-based differences in symptoms. So I think, obviously, the first question that comes up is, how can we represent diversity in AI? How do we make it better then? Well, it takes, first of all, a village to build great AI solutions. Everyone uses this a lot, this expression, but it really does take a village. And I'm not just saying women and men and different diversity quotas. I think it's also from data scientists to data engineers to product managers, editors, legal. All of us need to collaborate to make this a reality. And since this looks a little bit like an orchestra or a place where there's music playing, I think we also need to think of it as an AI orchestra, because every orchestra needs great musicians, of course. You need the best talent out there, but you also need a very good conductor. Because the conductor is the one balancing the outputs, balancing a little bit the quotas between the different angles. And you're able to explain why is it that the harp is playing right now and the piano is being quiet. All of these decisions need to be explained by the conductor. And therefore, managing AI is a little bit like conducting an orchestra because harmony is key. And that's something I think that a lot of AI companies that work with AI are not fully understanding, that representation and balance is key and it should be part of the process. So closing now to the end, I want you to not just invest in AI talent when you're looking into it, and invest in your strategy too, because your strategy is going to act a little bit like the conductor. And another one is, I think a lot of people, if you haven't built AI into your solutions, are like, hey, how do I not, excuse my French, fuck up? And I want you also to understand that you will no matter what, because it's AI. It's not a perfect solution. It is a lot of probability and statistics trying to understand what you wanted to respond back to you, at least at this stage. And I think we also need to take accountability, because AI is not sentient, at least not at the moment, but you should definitely treat it as such because it's built by humans. And so I think we must assume algorithms are just as error-prone as the humans who built them. And to kind of finish it off, I was hungry when I made my presentation, so I want you to think a little bit like if there's a whole like tech stack and there's a little bit of decentralized network, connectivity sugar, some AI milk, and computing flour, what happens if your milk is spoiled? And I think this is something to really keep in mind, because this is what is keeping or destroying your tech stack, I think, in the future, is if you have one of these things that are not working properly, if you let bias influence your AI, everything else is also impacted. And it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So I think it's something that we really should take really good care of when we move into this world. And that is it. Thank you so much. And yeah, my name is Nermeen, and you can follow me on social media.